I am Bryce Newberger, and this is the Kinship Chronicles, Children of the Phoenix, Chapter 19. Amora watched her mother run away into the town filled with fire and death. She looked down at Teddy, who was similarly transfixed. "Come on, Teddy. Mama said to get to the fishing hole." "No," Teddy said. Amora was a bit surprised to hear her almost mute brother speak, but her mother had given a command. She was conflicted by the choice in front of her, but after the horrible experience with the motherly imposter earlier that night, she would obey her real mother until death. "Sorry, Teddy, but we have to do as we're told. Mama will return with Papa." Of this she was certain, and had placed all her faith. "No, I'm going to Mama." That was the longest sentence of Teddy's life. He shook free of her hand and ran back into the fray. Amora called after him, then reluctantly gave chase. If she wasn't going to look after her little brother, then who would? A day earlier, a note arrived at the castle. It had been marked urgent, but was signed anonymous. The king and his men had been discussing it for the better part of the day. The note simply read, "Dear officiates of Eterna, the rise reach comes. 80 soldiers, 10 captains, 1 commander, 6 scouts, and 1 General Fallhurst. Ridgewood, prepare for war. Sincerely, one with vested interest." Was this an ambush? A declaration of war? A warning? It had been accused of being all during the meeting. King Denigno ordered a respite from the conference and currently sat in front of a mirror staring into his aged face. His gray-blue eyes seemed more gray than blue recently, and the dreary color had somehow transferred into his thick brown hair. Crow's feet now remained perched next to his eyes even when he wasn't laughing. A slender hand rubbed the side of his beard. He closed his eyes and leaned into the touch. Queen Santuoso leaned down and kissed her husband's head. "There is only one right answer," she said softly. The king nodded slowly. "We must send aid to Ridgewood." The queen smiled, then slid her arms around her husband from behind and rested her cheek against his ear. "I have one request of you regarding the issue." The king smiled and imagined she had an opinion on how to handle the collateral damage of the likely battle. "If it's possible, my love, it will be done." "Send me with them." "No!" He jumped up and began to throw a fit, which turned into an argument which lasted much longer than expected. One night later, Queen Santuosa rode at the back of a procession of knights who were riding off to Ridgewood's aid. The trip had been rushed, but ultimately delayed because of her request. Her army was running a few hours late and would be arriving into town well after nightfall. It was chilly out, and her breath left ghost trails in the torchlight as they trotted onwards. She desperately hoped they reached the town to find the note was one big false alarm, a cruel prank played in ill taste. Amora and Teddy had caught up to their parents just in time to see Ada shoot the massive armored general, but father didn't look well at all. Both were stunned into silence, awaiting the outcome of the scene. And then the explosion happened. Teddy slammed into Ada, and all went black. Fallhurst arose from the ashes. The entire town was a wreck. His men were scattered, sparse, and shell-shocked. 2 scouts emerged from the forest. These men looked orderly and pristine compared to the rest of the survivors, telling of their situation beyond the town. "General, sir!" The men saluted in militaristic fashion, but couldn't hide the look of awe his battle scars inspired. "Yes." His trademark ominous tone seemed indifferent to his scorch marks and tatters. "A large military force approaches." "Gather the remaining troops and regroup." His order adorned a deep, resounding hate into a still, calm remark. The whole excursion had turned into a giant mess. The town should not have given this much resistance. He wondered what the blazes had happened. "Get me Commander Absolic." 2 soldiers looked at one another with apprehension, as if in silent debate with one another. Finally, one spoke. "He's been killed, sir." "What?" This was the first time any in his command had heard surprise in his voice. 2 more men hefted up a large green brute of a beastman from under some wreckage. "This one killed him, sir." Skidell's head drooped, and it was uncertain whether he was living or dead. Fallhurst approached the impressive specimen. "He also killed a few dozen of our men single-handedly," the soldiers added. When Fallhurst was close enough, Skidell quickly regained his fury and leapt for the general in a surprise attack. The general slapped the attacker's hands down and caught him by the neck. Then, with impressive strength, the general lifted the bulky hulk off his feet with one hand. "I like this one." He then tossed Skidell back into the guard's embrace, who clubbed him viciously into unconsciousness. "Take good care of that one. He may soon be your commander." Nearly moments after the last soldier of the Empire had evacuated, the first scout of the kingdom entered the town. He was soon followed by the army of the king. As the soldiers piled the bodies, Queen Santuosa wept openly at the wreckage. This was not what she had asked for, to witness wanton death and destruction. The stack of dead civilians contained more women and children than it did able-bodied men. She had expected to offer relief and aid had they been too late, offer counsel and feelings of safety had they been early. Amongst the ashes were strewn cooking pans, wooden toys, fabric dolls, mugs for drinking, and tools for working. This was once a place for living. Now it was a mass grave. Then Santuosa saw a vision that broke her heart. Over the wreckage of a building lay two lovers, a man and woman clutching one another in their last moments. Immediately next to them, a dead little girl who was sitting hunched over the body of a deceased little boy. Without thinking of anything else, the queen directed her horse towards the bereft family. Her steed faltered over the terrain, and she found herself falling weightlessly downward with a hard crash in front of the corpses. Amora clutched Teddy's dead body close to her, ignoring the intruding woman. Teddy was warm when she first awoke, and she had pulled him over to her parents. They were cold. She was waiting for everyone to wake up. She was waiting for Teddy to open his little eyes and frown at the dirt covering him as he often did. She waited for her mother to come to and scold them for not waiting for her. She waited for her father to smile at her, rub the dirt from her cheek and say, "There's my little princess." But they didn't wake up. And Teddy just continued to grow colder and colder. After the stranger had crashed before her, she began to shake uncontrollably, as if her body finally realized it was alive. Santuosa regained herself and spoke softly to the little girl. "I'm sorry, child. They're gone." She wished there was something to say here, but there wasn't. No words could speak to the brokenness before her. Resolute, she decided that the girl was going to accompany her, and there was nothing for it. She gently placed her hand on the girl's frozen shoulder. Amora responded by snapping her bloodshot, swollen, soot-filled eyes back at the queen. "Come," she said, as if cooing a frightened rabbit. Amora just clung tighter to her family. The queen finally pulled her away violently. Amora kicked and screamed as she was loaded onto a horse and led away from her family's cemetery. After both of the armies had come and gone, after the bodies had burned and markers were left, one figure remained. He had stayed hidden from most of the commotion and the aftermath. He walked through the rubble and let his sorrow abound. He was the antithesis of the bleak situation, garbed in white and silver. He hadn't been to the town since dropping off his sword at the smithy a day earlier. Mel crouched before the pile of bodies, feeling like his strength was sapped from the sight of the tragedy. "Creator," he began, "I know you can stop time, withhold tides, and reverse the orbit of planets. Help me see your purpose in allowing this." When he finished his sentence, it began to rain. The sun started to rise in the east. The night was over, and a new day was dawning. Mel got a strange feeling in his spirit that there was someone waiting for him in the forest. Thank you for listening. I'm Bryce Newberger, and this has been the Kinship Chronicles, Children of the Phoenix. If you enjoyed what you heard and you'd like to purchase the full book, then either look up New Books on the Google Play bookstore, NEU Books, or simply click the link in the description. The book is only $5, and I appreciate your support.